Hey, it's Drew, and I just finished a really remarkable conversation with Simon Mulcahy, who is the CMO of Salesforce. And we covered a lot of territory, but boy, it really comes down to the actions that you are taking to build trust with your customer, focusing on putting your customer at the center of your universe and then building your marketing around it. It was a real reminder that that leadership matters in an organization and that it's impossible for a CMO to be successful without a CEO who is committed to building a culture of trust. We spent very little time actually talking about Salesforce and Salesforce technology, which I think is an important part of this episode. I think you're going to really enjoy it. So have a listen.
Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, a show that will help you transform your marketing from mere messaging to programs that break the rules and make a difference. Join the movement today and learn non-traditional techniques that give you an edge. Now, here's your Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
My guest today is Simon Mulcahy, the CMO of Salesforce, a company I'm guessing most of you are quite familiar with, given the fact that it has over 150,000 customers and close to 4 million users. I may have that math wrong, and Simon will correct me, but we'll get to that in a second, because before we do, I wanted to share a bit about Simon's fascinating background. Early in his career, he was a strategy consultant, and before that, a British Army officer. He has an MBA from Columbia University, London School of Business, and INSEAD, which I understand is quite an amazing large program in France, and has an honors degree in economics and politics. He speaks fluent French and German, which we will not be testing on the show, and is a global leadership fellow for the World Economic Forum, an organization that he worked for 4 years prior to joining Salesforce. So Simon, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Drew. Delighted to be with you.
So before we get to Renegade Rapid Fire, I couldn't help but notice that you were in the British Army, an officer, and Prince William was an Army officer. So are you guys chums?
No, in fact, I never got to see him in combat uniform. Although James Blunt, I did know. He wasn't James Blunt, he was James Blount.
Really?
He changed his name for fame purposes, but yes, I knew him.
That's amazing. It's funny because I saw James Blunt at a Marketo conference not this year, but last year, and he's terrific. He's so funny, and
he's great.
He really is. He's a tribute to it. All right. Well, so let's move on to Renegade Rapid Fire and just see how far we can get to in 8 minutes. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So what's your definition of marketing?
It is to deliver a personalized and contextually relevant experience, deliver those at scale, frankly, across all touch points to customers, prospects.
All right. We'll circle back to that one. Okay. Primary role of the CMO
is to network across the whole of the organization and bring to bear all the different teams, be they in marketing or anybody else, to achieve that personalized and contextually relevant experiences.
So given that's your role, what's the top priority right now for you on the job?
Top priority right now is always to ensure that we have a really powerful business development pipeline.
So like all of the listeners here, you are trying to figure out how you can get more customers in your pipeline. Okay, cool. And of course, they're using Salesforce to do it, so that'll be an interesting thing to talk about. What's the favorite part of your job?
Favorite part of my job is people. Marketers are a incredible species, and these are people who are hungry to learn and grow. And a large part of my job is not the marketing itself, but the creation of an environment where marketers can grow.
Very cool. So what's your least favorite part of the job?
My least favorite part of the job is Do you know, that's the one thing I didn't really think that much about. I find it hard. I mean, I love my job. I think
there's always
I think
something.
it's probably the detail. I'm not personally the details department, the best person in the details department. So I think getting down into the real details I kind of like the head of the broad brush department.
But do you really think a CMO should get in the weeds?
I think that more and more CMOs have to get into the weeds because the devil is in the detail. It's becoming more and more a precision business.
All right. So that may be a critical flaw that we'll have to address later on. All right. Best advice you were ever given?
Say yes.
Love it. That's interesting. Okay. Proudest moment as a marketer. This could be your whole career.
Proudest moment as a marketer was when we launched our Blaze Your Trail campaign. The amount of effort that went into that, the amount of basically disagreeing with how everybody else, agencies and everybody else was advising us. We came up with a very, very, very different brand campaign that's now effectively rippled through the very DNA of who Salesforce is. So launching that was incredibly proud moment.
Yeah, I read a little bit about that, and I definitely want to talk about that idea and also how it rippled through. So, is there a different answer to this question? The most renegade thing you've done in your career?
So the most renegade thing I did in my career was I got promoted when I was working in London, and I took that opportunity to resign from my job, which kind of startled my boss at the time, and I then went to a pub, which is what you do in England, waited for my wife to join me, and then we did The Economist had just brought out the best places to live and work in the world report, and we did a heads or tails flip over Canada or Switzerland about the place where we were going to go and live and find and start the next part of our lives, and heads it was, which was Switzerland, and I made the decision. So that was kind of renegade.
No kidding. And so which one did you end up in?
In Switzerland. That was what led me to Switzerland and led me to ultimately working for the World Economic Forum.
That's an amazing story. Okay. So is there a brand out there that you admire that most people haven't already mentioned on this show?
Oh my goodness.
Well, you could just start with a brand that you admire.
So I love Apple because I'm an Apple user. I love Adidas. Now, Americans call that Adidas. Yes. It's a German company founded by Adi Dassler. I am so amazed at everything they've done to reinvent themselves, become digital first, explode their growth, and do it in a way that they've frankly made themselves beguiling and interesting to every consumer. I love it. I love what they're doing.
No, I agree. It's amazing. And even their retail experiences, which, lots of companies have struggled, and how you integrate omnichannel. It's quite amazing. I have a bone to pick. I'm a heavy Apple user like you, but I have such a bone to pick with this elimination of ports and cords. It's just killing me.
I got to say, yeah, I've got a lot of different options going on in my office right now, trying to figure out, all these tiny little widget connectors I've got to add. Yeah, I agree with you.
I just don't think they actually use these devices themselves. And so anyway, but that's a different story. Okay. Is there a recent book that made you rethink something?
Two books. One, which you can't buy online. It's called Pattern Language. It blew me away. It was written in the 60s by a set of architects who effectively said, what are the design principles for the world in which we should live in? And they looked at cities, all the way down to parking lots and then individual homes, and defined in really amazing ethnological detail, the kind of design requirements for homely places. It's an amazing book. Wow. And then the second book, which I'm reading right now, which is why it's top of mind, is the Square and the Tower by Niall Ferguson, which is a phenomenal book, which lays to bear the whole world of hierarchies versus networks, which is frankly reshaping the world we live in today. But as it turns out, networks have been kind of the silent operator and design principle behind much of the change in our society since forever.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think the audience will know is that you're a big thinker, and both of those represent some really interesting, things. And I bet we can sort of link that thinking to the marketing that you've done. Okay. Before we do that though, do you believe that machines will ever be able to do your job?
No, I don't, because I do feel that there is so much creativity and so much humanness that has to happen for marketing to be successful. You can automate and optimize a massive amount of marketing, but true genius marketing is about that personalized and contextual touch point. And the more it gets automated, the more the differentiation will still be the humanness of it all.
Well, I can't help but say that I completely agree with you. But my last two guests, actually, not necessarily in chronological order of listeners, but the last two people that I've interviewed both said they thought that the machines would replace them. And I was fascinated by that. And I think it's so interesting that you work for a highly technologically driven company and you would answer that. So awesome. And then finally, what would you be doing if you weren't a marketer?
What would I be doing if I weren't a marketer? And I kid you not, I swear, when I left the army, I this is the truth. At one point, I got really excited by the fact that you could earn £100,000 as a plumber, and for half a day, I considered a career in plumbing, but didn't go there. And I ended up also looking hard at becoming a landscape gardener, which I also didn't do. I got so excited about it that a friend of mine kind of caught my enthusiasm, and he left London. And this is true. He left London and set up a landscape gardening company south of London called Mown and Grown.
Hilarious. So have you had any landscaping? Is that ever been incorporated in your life as a hobby?
No. Funnily enough, I am the least green-fingered person I know.
Perfect. And you don't even own a plunger either, do you?
No, luckily I haven't needed to, I'm sure I own a plunger. I haven't needed to become an adept plumber.
I see. All right. Well, with that, extraordinary, options, to consider as backup careers, we will, be right back.
You've been listening to another great interview on Renegade Thinkers Unite with Drew Neiser. But the value doesn't end there. As a listener, you can download a free ebook from Drew, Renegade Thinkers, interviews with 11 trailblazing CMOs any business can learn from, top marketing thought leaders and proven executives from Time Warner, American Express, and Chico's, and others. Get your free copy at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook. For listeners only, at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook.
Okay, we're back, and my guest is Simon Mulcahy, and we were just talking about his alternate career choices of plumbing and landscaping, which fortunately for the marketing world, he did not pursue. Let's talk about, you've been at Salesforce now for 9 years, which includes the last 18 months or so as a CMO. It's been a period of extraordinary growth and technological change. I mean, the whole world of marketing automation and CRM and marketing automation really has come into its own in the last few years. First of all, just how have you kept up with all of this?
Well, first of all, I think the fact that Salesforce is just this organization that's plugged into our customers, and we spend more time than ever listening to our customers and taking the feedback from them, internalizing it, and then you see the representation of that in our technology. What that means is that every executive is spending a lot of time with customers. I spend a massive amount of time with customers, and it's just hearing from them. What are they trying to do? What challenges are they trying to address? That's kind of the lifeblood of everything. And then second of all, exploring what are the technology options that we have in the world. Part of that is through organically building them, but also we are talking to a lot of companies that we end up acquiring, and there's a massive amount of learning that happens there.
Okay, so in an interview a year ago with Ad Age, you expressed a desire to market Salesforce more like Amway or Avon, almost on a door-to-door basis, with evangelists really driving the brand. So it's a year later. How has that gone?
So I was kind of joking at the time. The key thing is at the center of who we are is the customer. And that has never been more important than it is today. What we're seeing in every company is around the world, people are going, oh my goodness, we built this company with a product in the middle, and we've got to rethink what that means. Because in the past, you could build a product, and the difficulty was in the ability to build that product. Today, it's easier to build an amazing product. It's much, much, much harder to engage the customer and truly be relevant to them. So across the board in every industry, we're seeing companies trying to figure out how they invert their business model and put the customer in the middle. And that's exactly what we've been on a path to do as well. And it kind of happened organically. We started building these communities of customers, and more we've started to listen to them. But over the last year, we have really, really surged on putting the customer in the middle of our whole business and listening to them. And as we've done so, it's transformed our brand. We talk more about these trailblazers than ever before. We've thought much more carefully about how do we tell their story in a unique and authentic way that other customers want to hear. So it's kind of reshaped all of our marketing. And the path that we're on, of course, is to become ever more authentic. One of the challenges that we find universally across every marketing organization, no matter what organization you're in or whatever, is that trust. Who trusts the salesperson and the marketer? When you draw a list of all the people from different types of job description, salespeople and marketers are generally very, very low down on the list of people you trust. That's because people assume there's some sort of intent behind what a salesperson or a marketer is trying to tell you. They're trying to sell you something. So the more that you can speak with an authentic voice, the more that your customers are evangelizing you in their own authentic voice, the more likely that there's a trusted voice around your brand out in the market.
So give me a specific example of how you have built, you talked about customer communities and what that means and what you've learned from trying to build customer communities.
Yeah, so we have these amazing community groups that exist in every city. I was only in London 3 weeks ago, and we had our London World Tour, which brought together 10,000 people locally and nearly 1 million people online. But what was interesting is that I could call out to the community there that they have the largest community gathering in Europe, and it's called London Calling. That's the name of their community gathering. And that London ecosystem meets on their own, completely outside of any aegis of Salesforce. There's no control by Salesforce. There's no brand policing by Salesforce. There are no there's no agenda that Salesforce is pushing. This is completely users of Salesforce who are meeting to discuss how they can become more successful. And those community gatherings are happening in every corner of the world. There was only one recently up in Tahoe called Tahoe Dreaming. In every city, these are going on around the world, and we hear about them and we support those communities, but it's driven by the community.
And were they all started organically?
All started organically by Salesforce customers, not Salesforce employees.
Right.
And it's amazing. And we go to those small groups of Salesforce people to listen and learn and participate, but in no way to lead or influence. And that's a very, very important part of community. Salesforce then becomes in its own right a big tent. Our events are not Salesforce, telling you how to think. We put on open up a big tent. Our customers all come under that tent. We run sessions. They run sessions. We pride ourselves on, at our events, having our customers do the majority of the talking, not Salesforce executives. which is back to this whole authentic voice. So this is reshaping everything about how we want our customers to touch Salesforce and our brand.
So it's interesting, and I as I'm listening to you, I'm also thinking about some of our listeners who don't have the resources and, the market share that you have a number one market share. You have incredible awareness. You probably have a deep pocket. Your CEO was on 60 Minutes for, an extended period of time and an incredibly positive story. So you're you're like an unstoppable force. I'm wondering if we sort of boil this down, if there's some lessons, because, you have a community. It helps that you have so many millions of users, right? For a brand that doesn't have as many millions of users, what do you think some of the lessons are that you've learned that they might be able to take from your experience, besides having a number one share?
So I think the first thing is a very, very powerful lesson, and that is that it's all about trust. And that might seem like highfalutin language and stuff, but it really is. If your marketing is all about generating trust in the world, in the community that you're trying to serve, then they're more likely to keep coming back to you. And that's been our number one value since we were founded. But as a result of that, it kind of shapes every single interaction we have with our customers. And I think that is becoming more and more the currency of the world in which we live in. And so every marketer's got to be thinking really, really carefully about, am I building a trusted brand? The communications that I'm having with my customers improving trust or taking away from trust? Is my brand promise? Am I saying things that my customers know to be true? And it's not just marketing though, it's the whole organization has to make trust a reality. It's got to be felt in your sales experiences, in your product, and every single touch point. So I think that marketing then happens at every single touch point, every single experience that your customer has with your brand has got to be helping to communicate that trust.
One of my favorite expressions about brand trust is that it takes years to build and only a second to lose. And it's true. And trust is fundamental. The question and I can hear some of the audience thinking about this is that there are decisions that sometimes you have to make. You can't answer every phone call in 5 seconds. You can't necessarily tell the customer that there's a feature that they want that, how do you in this massive environment of nearly 4 million customers make sure that the decisions you are making are, in fact, from a marketing standpoint, what are the things that you can do that do, in fact, build trust?
So, number one, I think, and I was going to reiterate the point again, is that in order to be a successful company today, you can't just have a marketing department who does the marketing. Every single touch point is marketing, is communicating your brand. And so this actually starts with the CEO. And the CEO has got to be saying, listen, gaining the trust of our customer is more important than our growth. And what that does is it then starts to create a cascade of decision making. And we've seen organizations who may have grown quickly, but at some point they hit like the trust crisis. And we see that the brands in the marketplace, I won't mention them, but flames coming out of every window on the back of that, they're just hitting this trust crisis. And that's the world we live in. So every single touch point with marketing needs to kind of reinforce that.
Okay. Let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some practical. You guys obviously use Salesforce. So let's talk about how to, some things that marketers might not be thinking about when it comes to technology and marketing automation and all this good stuff. So we'll be right back. Hey, it's Drew. I wanted to use this break to ask you a single question. Are you a courageous marketer? Do you have the courage to go to your board of directors and say, marketing could drive the growth of this company? We just need 3 times the budget. Do you have the courage to take the big idea that you already have and extend it internally and externally through influencers, through the media, through all of your content? If you're a courageous marketer but aren't sure how to roadmap all of this, I have a big idea for you. It's called Renegade Thinking. It's a program that we've developed and work with exclusively for B2B marketers, generally at large companies. And I want to give you my cell phone, 917-679-8852. Just text Renegade Thinking to 917-679-8852, and we can talk about how you can cut through. Okay, we're back. And Simon and I have been talking about what it takes to build trust and making decisions that go well beyond marketing to build trust. I've certainly seen your CEO in action. I've seen him speak. He's been a leader when it comes to 111 and just as a company that represents sort of this idealized, almost corporate social responsibility. It's got to be way up there in the most respected companies in the world. So that must be an amazing place for a CMO to live, is with a CEO like that.
Oh, it's amazing, and it's the values that are felt across the whole organization around this. It's a truly is a great place to work. And we see that in the results. We keep winning best place to work. I think we're the best place to work in the world, according to Forbes magazine just recently as well.
That helps. And that's a really good place. And we always talk about on the show a lot, whenever you rebrand or have a marketing program, it's got to be internal. And so, but let's now dive into, you are the leader in CRM, but I know you guys do so much more than that. And obviously, if you want to grow, you're going to have to continue to broaden the solution. But as we look at a business that is trying to build, get the most out of their marketing technology stack, what are some of the things that you see that customers aren't doing that they could be doing? How are they not taking advantage of CRM?
So this is a great question. It's actually, I think, a question on everybody's mind. And the first thing is that a lot of people are in the trap of compartmentalizing CRM as a tool to manage those pesky salespeople. Actually, CRM, in the old world, that was actually true. In a world that's very product centric, but in a world where you're trying to put the customer in the middle of your business, CRM is effectively the way of creating a single view of your customer across every touch point, irrespective of what team you're in, be you in sales team 1, sales team 2, marketing team 1, customer service team 2, or whatever. You can all see the customer. And that's what CRM is all about. And it's a bit like this. If you walk into an Apple store and you see somebody wearing that Apple t-shirt, and the question is that a salesperson, a service person, or a marketing person? The answer is yes. They're all three. And that's basically what's happening in companies today. Sales, service, and marketing are kind of merging. So you don't have a salesperson who's knocking on the door, disconnected from a service person who's trying to ring you on the phone, disconnected from a marketer, metaphorically, who's trying to slip a flyer under the door. All different touch points know what each other is doing. That's the job of CRM. And what I think a lot of people are doing is they're getting so excited by the capabilities of all these new technologies. You can just see the grids that they bring out every year. Look at the MarTech stack for 2018, and it frankly blows your mind. On the one hand, on the other hand, all these marketers are all excited about these new capabilities that they can kind of roll out and showcase internally. Look how great I am! I've rolled out this new capability. But what they end up doing is creating ever more fractured experiences for the customer. And at the end of the day, 1 million random individual touch points leveraging the very best technology is nowhere near, by a factor of 1 million, nowhere near as powerful as having a single unified approach to your customer across the company. And that is where people go wrong. Throw too much technology at the problem versus creating a single platform view of your customer.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I could see that, they get more excited about just the tech stack. And it's funny, I have seen this over and over again. It's easier to get approval to spend $1 million adding a new technology into it than it is to get $1 million to build a brand.
Totally. And this is a problem. This is the trap everybody falls into, is they're looking at the world from internal. They're looking internally. They're not going, well, what's the best thing we can do for the customer? And in almost every instance, the best thing you can do for the customer is make it easier for them to get what they want. Make it easier. And in order to do that effectively, you've kind of got to make it easier for the people inside your company to achieve that as well. So how do you have a platform that makes it easier for your employees to make it easier for your customers? And that means just create a single view of who the customer is and what they need.
And, I've got one client who can't get their salespeople to put the information in. And, just even getting it there, let alone having a single view. And it's just, it's kind of crazy. And, I thought that problem had been solved about 5 years ago. You just don't pay the sales guys if they don't put the information in there. But, all right. So, as we look at this, the future of all of this, and so we've got this single view. What are some of the things that you're excited about in terms of, and maybe there's an example of a company or a client that is that you're working with that is doing something sort of amazing and brilliant as an example?
Well, this is actually a kind of a follow-on from what you were just saying, is we see kind of a spectrum of customers, and they're all exciting, by the way. It's not just the customers who are at the bleeding edge, who are leveraging AI to generate kind of next generation experiences. It's just as exciting to see organizations just get their house in order, get their data in one place in order that sales and marketing can operate together on the same page, because the impact of that is amazing. And we're seeing that a lot in the insurance industry, which has been in technology debt for quite some time. And across the board, insurance companies are not out there leveraging the best of AI, but they are reinventing their customer experiences. It's Barclays Bank in the UK who rewrote their whole mortgage lending approach and just create a much, much simpler approach for the broker. And as a result of that, they've won awards by making buying a mortgage easy. So that's a good example of kind of getting your house in order and a direct material impact on the business. I mentioned Adidas before. That's a really exciting business. This is an organization which has historically gone and still does go to market through third parties, but it has really amped up its digital go to market, and Salesforce has been a very active partner in that, and it's exploded growth, especially here in the US, and it's created a really viral experience. And they're constantly at the bleeding edge looking at what they can do to reach out and engage customers. And it's not just individual touch points, but connected touch points. And they've looked to make every single experience as fast and as clean and as simple as possible.
And so, is part of this, at the center of this, is sort of e-commerce?
At the center of this, absolutely, is e-commerce. Is also the marketing cloud. So they use the Commerce Cloud, and the customer success, Salesforce's customer success platform. So the customer profile is there in Salesforce, but they're leveraging the Commerce Cloud to really reach out and engage the customer. Well, that's one good example. BBVA in Spain is a bank that most organizations haven't heard of, but I've got to tell you, this is an incredible organization. I was in Australia just recently and was speaking to other banks, and this is the use case that everybody's going to. This is kind of the reference company at the moment in the world of financial services, because BBVA, based in Spain, is looking at their customers saying, how do we make sure that every single touch point with our customers is truly unique and amazing and differentiated? They have 170, 180 journeys. Imagine these as coiled springs, super well designed experiences. And they're waiting for that customer to touch them. And that could be an ATM touch point, a mobile app touch point, or a web authenticated experience, or walking into a bank branch. And each one of those, dependent on, the state of that customer's account or the inquiry that they have, will trigger a pre-designed, personalized experience for that individual customer. So they turn up on the website because they're interested in a mortgage. Well, the next thing they're going to receive is not some random, do you want a savings account? The next thing they're going to receive is a pre-approval for a certain mortgage amount. So everything's done to just make it simpler and more effective. It's amazing.
Is that what you would call predictive analytics, or is that actually artificial intelligence at work?
So this is really funny, because this is where the definition of AI kind of starts to, grind down a bit. AI is just using technology really, really effectively and to get ahead of the customer's need. This is not machine learning. No, this is just pre-designing journeys, especially using Salesforce's Marketing Cloud. However, this then opens up the opportunity to then move into a world of AI, which I know a lot of marketers are really embracing now, because now you can take the insights from all of those journeys. You can now interrogate that data and improve those journeys for the next time. And in the case of many of our customers, actually improve those journeys in real time.
Interesting. And so typically I don't timestamp an episode, because these are long tail episodes. People might be listening to this a year from now, but it happens that we're recording on what is called GDPR Day. And I can't imagine that your customers aren't looking at this, and some of them are more prepared than others. But do you want to spend a second talking about GDPR and sort of where your position on that and where you see that impacting your customers?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And it comes back to that thing I mentioned at the beginning. We're living in a trust revolution, and it's all about trust. Now, a lot of people, they kind of parcel off GDPR as a compliance issue, a regulatory box they have to tick. This is much bigger. This is a real opportunity, because it's delivering to customers what they want most, which is the confidence that you're taking their data and you're leveraging it and using it as they would hope you would. And GDPR is not a switch you can flick. It's a journey that we all have to go on. Salesforce has invested a significant amount of effort and resources to make our platform massively helpful in any customer being on that journey. But ultimately, every organization has to decide that they want to do that. And when you look at all of the best brands in the world, they're all built, and the most admired brands, they're all built on trust. So this is really, really important if you're going to be a brand that you're planning on, staying around for the future.
It's so interesting. So I have to admit that for a long time I was colorblind on GDPR, thinking, hey, we're mainly a U.S. business, but it's stupid because we have international clients. And the one thing that, so in our efforts to, if you will, comply, in truth, our actual usable databases that have fully complied with GDPR have radically declined. So, that must have some impact on your customers as well.
Oh my goodness. This is really going to force people to become better marketers. The days of spray and pray are gone. This is when, at the beginning of this interview, you said, what is marketing? It's delivering personalized and contextually relevant experiences. This is a new world. And you can't do that if you're just trying to sell your product in a spray and pray way. This is all about putting your customer in the middle of your business.
Yeah, it's interesting because your business is so much about getting this information so that you can personalize and contextualize and provide this relevant experience. And so it makes sense that you define marketing that way. And it took me a second to wrap my mind around that as the definition of marketing. But now it starts to add up to me, and I can see how this makes sense. That
I'll give you another example of this, Drew, as well. As we've thought long and hard about this, we've been looking at all the people who are buying Salesforce, and we're like, no, let's look at all the people who are using Salesforce. These are people who they may swap paycheck provider, go from one company to another, but they're still using Salesforce. So we look at them, and we're like, how do we help them and continue to earn their trust? And in that instance, the best way we can help them is by helping them learn Salesforce. So we've invested a significant amount of marketing resources, not into promoting, into marketing in the traditional way you might think of marketing, but into educating, into helping them learn, into helping them become more successful with Salesforce. That's marketing.
It is indeed. And on the four pillars that I have for CMOs, having interviewed 250 of them or so, there's courage, as in have a big brand promise and be unique, like your position of blazing your trail. 2 is to be in the business of storytelling and be artful. And then 3rd is this notion of thoughtfulness, which is all about marketing as a service, which in your example is building a whole educational engine. And then finally, of course, there's metrics and measurement and a little bit of science. And clearly we've talked a lot about that. So, that's awesome. I want to sort of, as we wrap up this episode, if you've got a bunch of marketers here and you have an opportunity to give them 2 do's and a don't as they look into the future.
Well, I said my one, but let me just come back to it because it's really important. It's build a culture of trust. Read Rachel Botsman's book, Who Do We Trust or Who Can We Trust? Great book on trust. I'd say focus on building really great teams full of amazing talent, because these are the people who are going to have to make sense of this new and crazy world. This is really, really important. Make sure you've got the best technology at your fingertips, but don't run into the trap of cherry picking technology tactically. And I think many marketers think they can be the most amazing marketer by perfecting their art. This is a world of science now. And so at Salesforce, certainly my journey in the marketing organization, which is now nearly 2.5 years as CMO, has been really to move from the art of marketing to the science of marketing. And that's allowed us to be much more thoughtful about how and where we invest.
So first, Simon, thank you so much for being on the show. This has really been, as far as I'm concerned, a fascinating episode. I've certainly learned a lot on a number of levels and reminded of some really important aspects of marketing. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Drew. It's been a real pleasure.
And then to my audience out there, please. Think about trust and think about what you're doing every day to build trust of your customers. I mean, if there's one lesson to take home today, and then 2, to think about your boss. And, if you don't work for a CEO who's trustworthy and believes in trust, then you're going to have a tough time building your brand. So, with that, as always, thank you so much for listening. And, I just encourage you to keep those Renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.